To in principle, I call the Minister and Member for Ballina.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I speak today in support of the Library Amendment Bill. This bill enables 2 or more local councils to enter into arrangements for the provision, control and management of libraries and library services in any of the areas of the council. Arrangements can be entered into with the approval of the Minister for the Arts, who must have the agreement of the Minister for Local Government. I might say to the member for Bankstown that there's no sinister motivation in relation to this legislation whatsoever. Indeed, this bill will solve a problem that was experienced with an agreement between 4 North Coast councils last year, and that was the genesis of this particular legislation. Those councils, namely Tweed, Byron, Ballina and Lismore councils, had a joint library agreement known locally as the Richmond Tweed Regional Library. The agreement saw the provision of exceptionally good library services for the 4 council areas for over 30 years. However, in July last year, Lismore Council decided that due to the wording of the Library Act 1939, which only enabled 1 council to run a library, even a regional library, that they needed to take control of the regional library. One of the reasons given by Lismore City Council for acting in the way they did was to protect the rights of employees who hitherto had been employed by a body that wasn't properly constituted. Lismore, in taking control, this also included the combined assets of the library group, which are now included on the Lismore Council's balance sheet exclusively. The remaining 3 councils have lost the benefit of those assets and the control over them. Indeed, the actions by Lismore Council in relation to the Richmond Tweed Regional Library has caused the 3 disenfranchised councils to consider withdrawing from the service altogether. This would be a great shame and cause substantial detriment to the residents of those 3 council areas who currently have access to one of the best library services in New South Wales. The regional library, as it was operating, was providing an exceptional service. It had one of the highest memberships with over 50% of residents holding membership. It was also one of the cheapest library services on a per capita basis and the 2nd busiest library service in the state. This legislation will enable regional library agreements and further facilitate the creation of new agreements. It will also mean that a regional library will be able to access funding provided by the State Library of New South Wales because it will now be legally constituted. I commend the work of my colleague in the other place, the Honourable Catherine Cusack, for her substantial work on this legislation. The Honourable Member, with the then Shadow Cabinet's approval, introduced similar legislation prior to the prorogation of the previous Parliament in an attempt to fix the problem that existed under the old legislation, especially as it applied to the Richmond Tweed Regional Library. I also acknowledge the dedication and efforts of Martin Field, the former Director of the Richmond Tweed Regional Library, whose tireless work saw it become one of the most vibrant and well-patronised libraries in New South Wales. This is common sense legislation which will make regional libraries legal and encourage their growth. As the Minister for Local Government, I encourage councils to share resources, and mobile regional libraries supported by several councils are a good example of this cooperative approach. I commend the bill to the House.
The question is that this bill be agreed to